Okay, folks, welcome to the second and final of the Biff Bam Boom reviews. Final for now because this is the last of the two that they sent me. And what we're going to be looking at today is Cody Valiant number 0. Now, the first, excuse me, Biff Bam Boom review was on Interstella number 0. So do check that out if you have not already. And we're going to go dive right in on Cody Valiant now. And the first thing I want to say is that this cover is perfect. This is an absolutely perfect cover. I love the kind of nonchalant energy he's giving off as he's got every gun in the universe pointed at his face. And it's not just this. It's not just this that he's got that just stoic look about him. It's the fact that if you look up in the upper left hand corner, he's actually smirking at this. And so, and so I would have to say, I mean, just the dual combination of that. This is a wonderful cover right here, and I think it gets across immediately the kind of character that you're trying to communicate to the reader. So good job on the cover here. Now it does say mature content. That just refers to a couple of cuss words that have got sprinkled in here. I'll address that later. But let's go to the opening page or the title page, and immediately we start running into some issues because we've got some punctuation problems. Don't need a period there, don't need a comma there, need a period there, need a period there. And then we've got punctuation problems on the first couple of pages. And I'm not going to go over any of the punctuation errors beyond here. I mean, what you really need to do is have somebody who is good at punctuation, who, got all A's in English, and 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 just have that person look over the script, look over the finished product, and find things like this because you need to get these kinds of things cleaned up. So punctuation errors, we're just going to assume they're throughout the book, and I'm not going to try and go take them one at a time. Now, this is the initial couple of pages of Cody Valiant 0, and we see that our hero is immediately in the middle of a story where I don't know if he's like taken something from this place. We're not exactly sure what the mission is, but he's got to get the heck out of there immediately. And we see him fighting off a couple of monsters and then going to an ocular scan in order to get into his ship. And then here's where we have a little bit of a slight sequencing problem because now it looks like he's running toward the ship. If he's running toward the ship, how in the world did he do an ocular scan? So I would actually take that scene and move it in between these first two panels so that he's fighting off the monsters, he's running to the ship. He then does the ocular scan. We assume he gets on board, and here's the robot. He's getting on board. And then they're flying off, and we have another sequencing issue. But first, I want to take note of this. Cody and Manta are now leaving Savso Rathi. We should either know that from the artwork, or we should have somebody organically explain that to us. We need to have something other than an explanatory caption in here that basically tells us what you would suspect we don't understand. Like have Cody think something like, and Manta and I left the planet in a hurry, or have Cody say something to Manta that would indicate that they are leaving the planet. And the other thing is on this sequencing matter is that now that they're leaving, we just kind of assume they're going. I mean, you just go straight on up, and the robot instead says, I've chosen the best course off the planet. It's like, I thought they were already off the planet. So there's a little bit of a sequencing issue there. Moving on, we have this buildup of tension where he's got his boosters on overdrive. They're just a few seconds from deep space, and you know that the planet's about to blow up. I mean, that much is obvious because of what he's been saying up through now. And so once they're safely away, the next thing we expect to see is the planet blow up, because this is one of those things where we want to be edge of our seats. But we're not, because what we move to is a scene where he gets kind of, I don't know, wistful or something, and he wants to make sure that he's able to see it. So you get this drop in tension that really shouldn't be there. I mean, what would have been ideal is that, they just barely make it, the planet blows up, and then he turns around and, he gets to see the results of what it is that he's accomplished. Now the blast waves and all that kind of stuff give us this scene, which is a beautiful scene. I mean, this is probably one of the best interior scenes in the book, and it really impresses what the crew of this comic is able to do. The crew meaning the art team. What they're able to do in terms of the art and the coloring and the color schemes, and this is a very high energy, high intensive scene. You got a lot of reds and yellows in there, which bump the energy up. But then it moves immediately to a low energy scene, and again you get this like artificial lowering of tension, where you don't get to carry forward the excitement very far, and especially moving into this blue green color scheme that dampens the energy down considerably. Those are very cool colors, whereas red, purple, yellow, those are very hot colors. When you make this kind of transition, it's almost like you're throwing cold water on the comic. So be very careful about that. It almost would have probably been better to go to just more of a neutral thing where you're showing the colors as they are as opposed to enhanced. Um, so yeah, moving on from the. Oh, and one other thing, the moments later caption on the second panel. I mean, these are like successive panels. You don't have to tell us that it's moments later. I mean, we just basically assume that whatever happens from panel to panel is either happening immediately or it's happening moments later. Unless there's some need to indicate a substantial delay, yeah, you don't have to tell us that. Next up, we're going to move to where he is getting the bounty for whatever it was he was trying to track. And here is where I want to caution you about creating characters that are way too close to existing characters of other companies. You've got this character called Killagun here, and it's not an exact match, but looking at this guy, I can't help but think of Kilowog from the Green Lantern Corps. I mean, it's just kind of there. I mean, there's a strong resemblance. It's not an exact resemblance by any means, but the resemblance is there, and be very careful about that because, as I've shown in other videos, there are comic book companies out there who will sue the pants off you just for coming close to what they have as their own intellectual property. So now we've got CODY VALIANT is talking in this, where he's basically this is CODY VALIANT's voice in both of these captions, and this is a problem that I find that runs pretty much throughout the book, is inconsistent captioning styles. You've got CODY VALIANT talking up at the top corner, and he says, now for wasting my time," and then it gives a dash, and then my assumption would be that since the caption style changes in the lower right hand corner, you've got a different person speaking, but it's actually not a different person speaking. It's still CODY VALIANT. So this is one of the things that I noticed in the comic, is that you will have captions in different styles that'll be different either from panel to panel or sometimes even within the same panel. Like in this case, you have this girl up there, Josie, and her first dialogue balloon says, "Will this be all, Mr. Valiant?" And then her second dialogue balloon is in this colored style. They're like, why? I mean, is there something supposed to be something about her tone of voice? Is there supposed to be something about the way or the language she's using? And then same thing with him. And again, we have this moments later caption that we don't need. Do you need anything else, CODY? And even though he's been talking in these plain white dialogue balloons, then he says, "You know what I want, Josie." And is that supposed to be some sort of indicator of tone? I mean, I guess it could be, but it's not clear. It's not at all clear. And so I would just avoid trying to make up all these different captioning styles. Now you have same thing happening on this page, where you have Brute and Beulah, and even though even though they introduce each other as, are as old friends or haven't seen you in years, fuzzball, you know, we don't know anything about these characters, and so we don't know really whether they're friend or foe. And also note the orange tinge, which I don't know if that's supposed to indicate anything on the dialogue balloon, that it has an orange tinge, but he doesn't have it in the last panel on this page. But you have these two characters whom he has this exchange with, and from their facial expressions, and God only knows what the first creature's facial expression is, you can't really tell whether or not they're greeting each other with animosity or whether they're greeting each other with genuine friendliness. And so, especially when the woman Beulah brings up, well, actually, it's Brute who first brings up the parents of Cody Valiant, who apparently lived with him on Mars. But the woman, Beulah, also says, he doesn't want to be reminded about Richard and Elizabeth, rest their souls. And then he says, it's okay, I miss them too. I don't, it's hard to see whether this is a tense exchange and he's playing it off, or these are genuine friends. And it isn't really until the third page of this exchange where you realize they've been together for hours talking, and he's been hearing stories about his parents and stories about themselves and life, that yes, these actually are genuine friends. But we didn't really know that, and it's hard to know that from this. And what's more is that we have this we have this close friend or knowledgeable friend of Cody Valiant who is apparently explaining to him tales of his parents or tales of how, he watched him grow up, and etc. And we get none of that. And we don't get any of this backstory that is being poured out between these pages. You have hours of backstory being poured out between page 2 and 3 here, and we don't get any of it. And this is really a missed opportunity to kind of fill us in on who this Cody Valiant character is, because all we know about him is what we've seen of him so far. That's pretty much it. And then we're done. And we get to know that he has friends, but beyond that, nothing. And so here was a great opportunity to flesh out this character instead of leave him a mystery, and it's gone. And especially for something that's a zero issue, I mean, this is kind of the thing you want to put in an origin issue. Now, I know it always hasn't always been that way. I mean, the original zero issue was Magnus Zero by Valiant Comics, and that turned out to not be an origin issue, to my horror, when I realized I'd paid like $60 for something that was not even really a origin issue, although it was something that set up the 4-issue arc that came after it. But man, it's a little bit disappointing to have this zero and then to be given basically zero as far as backstory goes. So now we have the final conflict of the comic, which is where a pretty much orcish, or they call it more oinkish, biker gang comes to collect a bounty on Cody Valiant. And this last caption down here where it says, Josie, get under the counter, these fools look like they might try something. It looks like he's thinking that because it's in a caption box as opposed to a dialogue box. So is he thinking that, or is he actually saying that to Josie? Because it does say, Josie, get under the counter. I mean, he could be doing it either way, but at the same time, we don't know. Next up, his attitude towards them is to just flip them off, insult them, and then they shoot at his bottle. I mean, okay. The one thing you really don't want to do is ramp up the nonchalance to the point of stupidity. And that's what's happened here. yeah, I remember there was a show called Nash Bridges back in the day. Don Johnson was the lead of that, and there was a scene in one episode of Nash Bridges in particular that just ruined the entire series for me. And it was where he went to go pick up a note that was next to a bomb, and he picked up the note, and he just calmly walked away from the bomb that's ticking down to zero and reading the note. And the bomb, explodes behind him, and he's just calmly walking off. It's like, no, no, nobody acts like that. Nobody who has just been confronted by a biker gang who is here to collect a bounty on his head is going to respond by turning his back, flipping them off, and leaving himself exposed completely. And not only that, but provoking them to do something. That's just basically there's confident, and then there's just dumb. And at this point, Cody Valiant is acting completely dumb. So, this is where, yeah, the book loses a little bit of its. It's hard to say authenticity when you're dealing with a sci-fi comic, but in terms of how a person would authentically react to the fact that you've got people with guns at your back, yeah, this is not it. Let's see. So the firefight ensues, and unfortunately, we've got these like little puny bang sound effects. And I know from when Biff Bamboom and I had some conversations about this preview before, apparently this was something that they put in as a response to how I said I did not like quiet fighting. And this was one of my ISOM reviews. So in my ISOM review, I said I don't really like quiet fighting. I like there to be something heard in the panel, whether it's a bang, if you throw somebody in a trash cans, you hear the clatter, you got to have some sound effects in here. But if they're going to be puny sound effects like this, like bang, 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 don't even bother. It's better to have it quiet than to have something like this. So yeah, okay. So yeah, the more of the bang 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 stuff's here. So now we get more into the explanatory caption stuff again, where it says there is so much smoke and debris that both parties can't see to aim. And this is another case of, well, I don't expect you to understand what's going on, so let me just tell you. Like, no, you have to give that to us through one of the characters. If he's thinking, for example, there's so much smoke and debris in here, I can't see to aim, but I bet they're in the same situation. Something like that coming out of the character's head is a lot more believable. And then we're coming down to the climax of the fight, and here's a caption that says, "In the middle of the chaos, one of the Oinks gets blindsided by Cody." But we see this on the page. I mean, we see that he's gotten, the jump on this pair of Oinks, and we don't need to be told that. So that's kind of an over-explanatory caption right there. And now we have a caption where you've got an Oink come up behind him, and he's kind of taken a little bit by surprise. But then he just, makes short work of him, which kind of it's almost like, why was there any kind of tension there at all? It's that's almost like contrary to character in terms of him being taken by surprise like that and not having the same confidence throughout. This is like the first moment that we ever see his confidence shaken. But then he just resumes and takes the point right out. And I had to laugh at like the last caption on here where it says the largest Oink looks on in sorrow as Cody slaughters his friends, because that's just so like in his head, and you don't expect that. You expect, maybe a little fear, you expect rage, but he's kind of like, oh, my friends are dead. But the sad thing about that is that it doesn't translate over into the next page. If you look at the next page, all the largest Oink does is, mouth off in a stereotypical, you will regret this kind of, I'm going to kill you, blah blah blah. I'm avenging my brothers, blah blah blah. You had this actual moment of this guy being a real character with real feelings, and then just threw that right out the door. So I'm not exactly sure how I would have handled that, but either I wouldn't have bothered with trying to trying to get into the largest guy's head. I would have just basically said, let's move on to the standard stereotypical posturing. Now this has to do with one of the last people that Cody Valiant kills, and this actually breaks what's called the 180-degree rule. And this is not something that I knew about until somebody complained about this with ISOM number one. And it has to do with the idea that if you are looking at the same characters, you don't want to change the left to right orientation on the reader, uh, especially if that would make it unclear whether there's more than one person going on. And you got to realize that even though you've shown us a whole bunch of characters, we don't actually know how many characters there are that Cody Valiant was facing off with. Was this actually the last guy that he had to dispose of, or were there two people that he had to dispose of? And by changing this orientation, it's not clear whether he took out one person or two. And so that's what they call a violation of the 180-degree rule, because by changing that left to right orientation, it makes it unclear now just who was shot in both cases, because you got the impression from the bang that, well, the guy on the left is going to get shot, and then but on the right you don't know if that's the result of the bullet or if it's somebody else getting shot. So this could have been a little more clear if you just kept it left to right in both cases. So that's about it for Cody Valiant number zero. Beyond that, he's just going to go and find out who put a bounty out for him. And now we have another beautiful cover. I mean, this is another great cover, just in the sense of the posturing and the ideas, flowing out of this cover. I really like this. I also like the house ad here where it says, yeah, check out Cody Valiant, issue 1 to see me take out the legendary outlaw hero. No, I will take him out. It'll be easy. And then Cody Valiant says, I'll be damned if I get taken out in issue 1. And that's just funny. Okay, so let's go over pros and cons. Now, we'll tackle the pros first. The pros, of course, great covers. Oh my goodness, I don't know who's coming up with these cover concepts, but such a good job on the covers. The art style is I mean, this is like I said with Interstellar. You don't expect this art style to grow on you, but surprisingly it does. It's got this 1990s video game cutscene feel to it. But moreover, in Cody Valiant, you've also got the color scheme going for you, where you've got these beautiful, beautiful colors flowing out of some of these pages. Now, of course, remember what I said about using the muted colors and how the muted colors can drain the energy. But when the energy's ramped up and you're using the bright colors and you've got all these garish color schemes going at once, and it's just one neon kaleidoscope, sometimes it really pulls off well. You've got uncomplicated characters, and that in this case that's a pro, because you can easily kind of just fit your ideas of what these characters are like all together. Now later on you can flesh them out and make us realize that there's different things about them that you have to hold in your mind. But in the meantime, just the fact that this guy is kind of a Han Solo type character, and then you've got the bartender who's just a bartender for the most part, like any bartender, and then you've got the old friends who are like any old friends, and the dealer of stolen artifacts who's the same as anybody, and and then the biker gang. I mean, you're not asking the reader to try and figure out hard things about the characters while they're immersed in this new science fiction landscape. And then the book does have a good balance of action versus drama and other things. The book, I would say, is about half full of action and half full of talk, and so that's a good balance there. Now we'll go on to the cons, and unfortunately, there are quite a few cons in the book, despite the way that I've largely been raving about it. I want to say You got the punctuation errors. You got a little bit of a sequencing problem here and there, like the optical scan before he reaches the ship and plotting the course off planet after they've already taken off. You got the explanatory captions where really it should be coming from the characters what's going on. I mean, always try and keep us immersed. Don't like tell us what is happening on a caption, especially if it's obvious what's happening on a caption. Try to make it organic either through character narration or dialogue. There are these unexpected drops in tension. We're expecting the planet to explode. Instead, he gets wistful and turns around and looks at the planet. Um, and then another sequence where they're getting hit with the blast waves from the planetary explosion, and we have this high energy scene followed by a very very low energy scene. It's just very it's very jarring when that happens, and it drains the comic of energy. Character resemblances, always make sure that you're not doing something that's too close to an existing big two or even Image or Valiant or anything like that. Make sure that your comics are or your creations are as original as you can make them. We had the friend or foe confusion with the people in the bar, those two old friends of Cody Valiant who we really just couldn't establish up front whether or not they were actually friends or foes. That kind of thing needed to be established better so that we could get a bigger feel for the scene. And then there was that humongous missed opportunity at giving his backstory. I mean, they're sitting there talking for hours, and we learned practically nothing about him other than he had parents named Richard and Elizabeth, and that was pretty much it. Inconsistent captioning and balloon patterns, you want to keep those consistent through the book if you can. Yeah, especially in the same panel, it's like unless you're really trying to imply something, but I don't know what those particular moments were meant to imply. If you had like orange on one panel and white in another panel, or white and blue in the same panel, things like that. There were not really enough. This is not something I brought up too much, but there was not enough environmental shots, and by that I mean shots where you had more background. There were a lot of close-ups. There were a lot of shots where you didn't have to show where the characters were exactly. And sometimes that can work, like if you're in a confined space like a bar or in a ship. But eventually your reader is going to be kind of like, where are these people? And, can you give me like some lay of the land so that I know where the character is at any given moment, if I need to keep track of where these characters are. You'll know I comment on that quite explicitly in the ISOM reviews when I'm talking about the where the hell are these stairs. But yeah, I mean, you do, if you're going to have a character move from location to location, especially, then you need to know where that character is at any given moment. Now, in this case, we knew everything was taking place within a bar. It was easy not to care where the characters were in particular. Because, on one hand, it seemed kind of like nothing of importance was going on other than there was a big shootout. But beyond that, if you're going to actually start like having Cody Valiant get chased through someplace, it's going to have to make sense where he's getting chased through, and we're going to want to be able to know that he's gone from point A to point B to point C. So keep environment in mind, and don't feel like you can trade off environment for close-ups, because that's just going to annoy the reader over time. So there's some unnecessary cussing. Did you really need to have the F word and sons of bitches in there? I mean, one of the things that I always talk about is the R rating effect on sales. If you turn something from PG to R rating, you're going to cut your sales in half. That's what happens in the movies consistently. You'll have half as big a haul if you make it R rated as if you make it PG rated, because you're automatically telling your readers that this is not for some of them. Cody Valiant is a comic that, I mean, unless you go and explore much more mature themes in the future, would be fine for kids, with the exception of the cussing that occurred in this comic. So don't limit yourself by appealing to an adult audience. You might think that that is something that's going to draw more people in, but it's actually going to warn more people off. muted sound effects, the little bang, bang, bang. Yeah, avoid those. I mean, it's better to have a quiet fight than it is to have, just pew pew sounds. Um, Inner drama, outer stereotype. Yeah, that this is basically what I was referring to with the largest oink, where all of a sudden he's got this internal monologue going about his friends and the sorrow he feels as they die one by one at Cody Valiant's hands. But then when you get back out into the real world and you get out of his head, he's just saying stereotypical things. So it's like you got to pick between the two. Is this going to be a complex character, and are you going to bring that character out, or are you going to hold on a second? Sorry about that, got interrupted. So, are you going to have a complex character and bring that complex character's thoughts out into the world, or are you just going to have a stereotypical character? Because I mean, considering how that character ended up, I mean, why even put forward the effort? So anyway, that's what I was saying about the inner drama, outer stereotype. You need to just kind of pick what your character is going to be at that point. There's that sequence where the 180-degree rule is broken, and sometimes it's a problem, sometimes it's not. Like the time in ISOM where the 180-degree rule was broken because he was punching at the punching bag in various angles. It's like, who cares? I mean, it's just him out on the field, so it doesn't matter. But when you're in a packed bar and you have all of these different creatures of some sort who are attacking you, well, if you break the 180-degree rule, now you don't know if you're dealing with one creature or two. But I would say that probably the biggest con in Cody Valiant number 0 is that your character's hook is not really all that established. I mean, yes, he's a cool character. He is a bounty hunter. He is somebody who can acquire things for you and can hold himself in a bar fight. But what is supposed to be, his real hook? Why are we supposed to be interested in this character altogether? And that really ties into having missed the opportunity at giving backstory earlier in. Because when you had that opportunity, you could say, okay, here is what makes Cody Valiant unique. Here's what makes you want to care about him in particular. And we just didn't get that. It's almost like, okay, well, if you want to continue following the continued adventures of a badass smuggler, then here you go. Here's a comic book for you. But why Cody Valiant in particular? And especially since he's called the Legendary Outlaw Hero, what makes him any of that? Is he that now? Or is this his origin leading up to his being a legendary outlaw hero? I don't even know that part. So this whole idea of what is he supposed to become, what can we expect from him in the future, what's driving him today, all of these are elements that are missing from the comic. And that would bring your readers, it's the stuff that you really want in order to bring your readers back in. It's kind of like when Peter Parker lost his Uncle Ben, that tragedy. You wanted to see more of the character because you wanted to know how is he going to deal with his shame and his guilt going forward. What is it that we want to see Cody Valiant dealing with going forward? That's kind of what I want to know. And you see a little bit of this, kind of a touch of this in this one house ad where it's a quote from his mother saying, "I'll look for you in the stars, cowboy." And I like this ad. It's just you feel like there is this depth built into this picture and this saying from his mother, as if it's a little bit of a clue into maybe what drives him, but it's just not enough to go on. And so, in order for Cody Valiant to be successful going forward, I think you need to establish what his real hook is. What is the reader's real motivation for following along with this character? Because, I mean, there's all sorts of smuggler type, grifter type characters out there, but what makes him unique? What makes him the one you want to spend money on time after time? I think you've got to establish that. So that is my review of Cody Valiant 0 from Biff Bam Boom Comics. Don't forget, if you haven't already, to check out the other review on Interstella number 0. I think both of the books have potential, Interstella especially. But with Cody Valiant, I think it's just missing that little extra bit that I think could get it over the top and make Cody Valiant into a really interesting character. So I hope you work on that in the future, and good luck to you. So thank you everyone for following these reviews that I've done for Biff Bam Boom. And if you have any comics that you're interested in having analyzed, critiqued, and videoed for posterity, please do contact me. The best way to do so is through my Twitter DMs at Michael J. Partika, and or you can drop me a comment on YouTube, and hopefully I'll see that there. The notifications can be a little bit iffy. But anyway, thanks again for watching. I'm Mike Partika. Please do subscribe so that you'll get more reviews and more commentaries, and I will talk to you later.